Hello and welcome to our webinar. Thank you for attending today. We are going to get started here. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, please feel free to ask them with our Q&A button at the bottom of the Zoom, or you can ask them within our chat as well. And we will answer all questions at the end of the webinar. So today we will be going over monitoring Zoom and RingCentral with NetBeez. Just to go over the agenda, we'll give a brief overview and then talk about remote contact center as a service, as well as unified communications as a service, support challenges, the Zoom and RingCentral approach, and then the NetBeez approach. And then we will follow it up with a Q&A where we will answer all of your questions. Here are our hosts for today, myself and Panos from our engineering department. He's going to go over everything technical that I cannot for you. So I will turn it over to Panos.
Okay, thank you, Jess, for the introduction. And hi, everyone. So, as Jess just told us, right? So, they're going to be talking about how who can help your help desk help your uh, agents in contact centers working from home, right? Um, of course, there are many contact center unified communication vendors and tools out there. And today we're going to be talking about RingCentral and Zoom specifically. I'm on Zoom right now, as you know. And of course, one of the critical issues when you're on the phone or you're offering customer support is to have good audio and video, right? And it's not that common, of course, to have problems when you talk to customers, right? Either drop calls or poor voice and audio quality, right? And that's when the help desk usually comes in, where an agent working from home might ask for help to troubleshoot their poor audio quality in order to get back and get the work done, right? So most vendors, I would say, have a way to help troubleshoot these kind of issues. And we're going to go through what Zoom and RingCentral's approach to this problem is, right? And then we'll show you what are the shortcomings and how NetBeez comes in to complement and close the gap in help desk support for remote, mostly, I would say, contact center users. So, of course, we went through the pandemic, and I would say, like, although now there's a drumbeat for return to the office, the contact center job, right, is something that I think it always was kind of always like would lend itself to working remotely. Even before the pandemic and after the pandemic, although lots of other functions like sales engineering are returning to the office, the contact center employees have stayed mostly remote, right? And this research here was done in 2021 at the height of the pandemic by EMA Research, but it still remains relevant, right? So what were the top issues faced by remote workforce? And at the top of the list there, actually, we see like home Wi-Fi, and it's not surprising, either at home or on campus, right? On enterprise Wi-Fi, that's the first thing to blame when you have either slowness in applications or poor audio and video quality. Another big failure point is VPN concentrators. Again, during the pandemic, during transition, during that 1 or 2 months of shutdowns, VPN was kind of everybody's mind, right? Because now you went from a situation where you had maybe a small percentage of your employees on VPN, you would have to go to 100% on VPN, right? So a failure in your VPN infrastructure would cause, like, I would say, uh, something really, really noticeable, right? compared to the case where you have only 5 or 10% of your employees daily on VPN. And then, of course, on the top of the list there, again, there are other common pain points when it comes to networking, like edge devices, gateway routers, right? Of course, the applications themselves, cannot blame the network always. When you have slowness accessing an application or a service or a tool like unified communications, then they can be also the culprit when it comes to poor voice and audio quality, right? So all these remain relevant. And if you visualize them here, right, when you have a remote employee, let's say, and they open a ticket with help desk in order to address their issues, we know that the help desk staff, they have to start thinking, okay, what might be causing all this kind of poor experience? And of course, the Wi-Fi, as we said, is the first thing to look at. It's not uncommon for many of our customers to require their employees to not use Wi-Fi. They tell them don't go to any cafes or public Wi-Fi, and even when they're at home, they ship them or they ask them to plug into the router, right? And that's of course advisable. I'm plugged in right now. I don't use Wi-Fi for the vast majority of my work. Of course, if I move around the house, I'm also working remotely, right? I'm going to use Wi-Fi, right? But I know that for my kind of uh, day-to-day kind of work, I'm going to be plugged in. Then comes the ISP. Each one employee is going to use their own. You don't have control over the the consumer router that the ISP provides. You don't have any visibility there. And part of the troubleshooting process may be, hey, go reboot your router, plug into the router, and also talk to your ISP, right, and tell them that they need to look into your connection. And then going down the line here, how do you monitor things like, okay, what is my latency and availability of my VPN? If you have full tunnel, the VPN becomes the kind of single point of failure there, and then not only in terms of like availability, but also performance, right? And then going to third-party applications, and the discussion of the topic of the day today is Zoom and RingCentral, right? So when you try to access this services, what's your performance? Do you have historical? Do you have reporting and baselines to understand if an issue came up recently, let's say when the ticket was open today or yesterday? Was it, when did it exactly start, right? Is it intermittent or has been going on even before the user noticed? Okay, so let's see now a little bit how Zoom and RingCentral try to help their customers, right? Of course, this is not a new problem. These vendors are aware of these issues that they need to help provide resources and tools to their customers to troubleshoot these kind of issues. So in Zoom in particular, maybe you don't know that, but if you go under Zoom settings and statistics, they give you this real-time type of, I would say, metrics. These are available to any user that is, it's on Zoom, but also Zoom offers like a dashboard to kind of, for monitoring like all employees of a, let's say, of a specific account under their software platform, right? Of course, for the layman user that's unskilled and they don't understand these things, that jitter, latency, and frequency and packet loss doesn't mean anything, right? But imagine now here a scenario where you're troubleshooting a user's connection and you ask them, hey, can you go now open Zoom, go to settings, statistics, and tell me, all right, give me a screenshot, right? Or tell me what do you see there. It can become cumbersome and it's not scalable, I would say. Another actually thing I discovered for Zoom specifically when I was playing with it is that they give some more information. They keep adding actually this type of troubleshooting information. So they have a set of Zoom maintained, obviously, services out there, points like the one you see here, us.telemetry.zoom.us, where which can be used as an endpoints to measure latency, packet loss, etc. Right? So accessing this information actually is look at this. Right? You have to go to settings, statistics, run test meeting. So it becomes a little bit of, I would say, like even for me, every time I have to go and look at this, I have to try to remember how I get there. There's of course like a key binding you can use to pop this up if you can remember that. But nonetheless, these are information that, let's say, again, going back to the scenario where you are troubleshooting something, staff from help desk trying to help a remote user, they can tell them, okay, open your Zoom client, run these tests here, and tell us what you get, right? And then Zoom provides a kind of a table, some acceptable metrics around jitter latency, packet loss, right? So they tell you, okay, is your latency high or latency or packet loss, right? If not, then your MOS should be around this value 3.5 to 5, right? And then if you deviate from those values, you can go to an unacceptable mean opinion score that results in, again, like bad customer service experience, right? So this is the Zoom approach. Similarly, RingCentral, in order to troubleshoot these kind of issues, they have on their website, in their documentation, they have, kind of troubleshooting steps, right? So again, if you are the help desk staff and the user opens a ticket, you're going to send them a link and tell them, hey, can you follow these steps? Well, for us and the ones, that are here attending, right, and watching this webinar, that you're kind of in the help desk industry or you're engineers or, you have some technical background, these are kind of, okay, not something challenging, but imagine now asking a user, okay, going to speedtest.net to get the latency, run 4 of these tests, right? Record the values and see if they fluctuate too much, or how close they are to 75 to 80% of their speed provisioned by their ISP, right? It can become hairy, right? And then another here documentation page from the documentation by RingCentral, similarly, right? They tell you, okay, open the Windows CMD and copy paste this command. So you do a latency ping test to one of the RingCentral servers, you save the file, and then you zip it, and then you send it to helpers, right? So again, helps, it's there, but it's not something can scale very well, all right? If you're going to support hundreds or thousands of remote contact center users. Can be on a case-by-case basis, and that shortcoming of this that it's not proactive, right? So to summarize, how these kind of vendors approach troubleshooting, it's mostly like in one-by-one basis, right? So you can, of course, get in touch with the employee, give them some guidelines, and expect from them like to send you back some information, right? It's not scalable. It can be frustrating to get hold of the employee, interrupt them from the regular job to do this, work to do this type of troubleshooting, right? And it's reactive. So you can troubleshoot this or detect this issues only after the actual contact center agent has experienced poor quality issues, right? And there's no historical information. So you cannot compare let's say again, the recent performance of latency or speed test to previous historical baselines, of the last, let's say, week or month. So now let's see what is the NetBeez approach to this, right? So we start by taking, I would say, the remote agent input out of the picture, right? And how do we do that? We install the NetBeez endpoint. We support Mac and Windows on the user's laptop. This can be done with some remote management tool like Intune, for example. That's pretty standard, right? So once you have this, endpoint installed on the contact center agent's laptop, then it's managed fully to the NetBeez dashboard. So this now on your NetBeez dashboard, you're going to have an endpoint for each employee, and continuously now the endpoint runs synthetic testing to monitor and measure performance with regards to Wi-Fi, ISP, latency to your VPN concentrator, to your all these services, Zoom, RingCentral, right? So for example, in the previous steps, where I showed like that us.telemetry.zoom.us, right? Or the other URL from the RingCentral documentation, you don't have to ask the user to run these tests for you and then communicate the results back the screenshot and such. But you can run them, again, on the background continuously. You have historical, and you can be not only like be able to have information to troubleshoot what has caused an issue, but also be able to be proactive, right? Even if you have the right metrics, understand very quickly who is affected, if it's a global problem, and be able to troubleshoot things at scale. So this is, I won't go through a live demo, but I'm sure you got the idea here, right? So we're replicating the manual step-by-step, I would say, troubleshooting information these vendors, RingCentral and Zoom provide by using the NetBeez agent here, right? So the dashboard, of course, you see here Windows and Mac users has this continuous information flowing, and you can set up alerts to be notified when certain thresholds go out of acceptable values, like let's say your jitter goes above 30 milliseconds or your packet loss above 1%, and integrate all these with your ticketing system in order to be able to have information and automation integrated with your operations. So we have, for example, customers that they have been able to use NetBeez to detect kind of issues, and as soon as they detect that a contact center agent is having issues, they take them out of the queue pool. They help them troubleshoot the issue, or they do it remotely. And once their performance and connectivity is back normal, they put them back in the queue, right? So, and as an example here, you see a case where we captured users' performance, where the jitter increased. That's the green line at the bottom there. So the jitter increased, went, I would say, out of whack here up to 150 to 100 milliseconds. And that resulted a drop in the MOS score, which is the purple line here. And then as the issue was restored, and that might have been because, let's say, the user plugged into the router and took the Wi-Fi out of the picture, or who knows, maybe they had to restart the router, right? That's not common. The things came back to normal. Jitter went down to lower, I would say, below like 10 or 20 milliseconds, and yet the MOS score went up to 4.5. And this is the information that the help desk can access to the NetBeez dashboard without having to get any input and feedback from remote users working from home. So to summarize here, the NetBeez approach is a way that replicates what troubleshooting steps RingCentral and Zoom recommend when remote agents face issues, but in a scalable way and a centralized way through a single pane of glass of a dashboard where all users have their metrics in terms of their Wi-Fi, ISP, VPN performance gathered and visualized. It can be proactive, obviously, right? Because if you detect that a user's, let's say, packet loss goes above a certain threshold, you can get notification and go and address issues as soon as possible. And of course, after the fact, you have the baseline, the historical to compare and see how the performance has been, let's say, since the issue came up compared to the previous week or month. And with all of this, of course, the data, you can create reports. You can have your weekly reports to see what has been the overall performance and status of your remote contact center users. So yeah, with that, I'll invite you to sign up for a trial. This is the URL here, netbeez.net/start. You can test NetBeez, for 14 days for free, and then you can talk to us and for any further discussions. And I'll pass it to Jess for any Q&A or anything else I've forgotten.
Thank you. Okay, so I think we have a question here. Can Panos talk to how the NetBeez agent interfaces with RingCentral and Zoom call control platforms? Can the agents make calls into and through these platforms? Do you want to speak on that question?
Yeah. Okay, so I can see here the question, right? Yeah. Okay. Right. So I showed, for example, right? Yeah, we cannot place calls directly, like I guess the way you're asking here, like following some kind of a C protocol, right? We measure the performance by using endpoints that RingCentral and Zoom, for example, themselves offer and recommend to be used as performance measurements, right? And then going back to these slides here, let me jump back to this, right? So, for example, RingCentral's documentation, RingCentral works within contact data centers, right? So they offer, for example, these two URLs to measure latency, right? And from there derive what is also the latency to RingCentral's infrastructure. Similarly, Zoom has a number actually of similar URLs. There is US telemetry. There is one, I think it's called monitoring.zoom.us that also, are used by, can be used by Zoom when you onboard customers to evaluate their performance, but also for troubleshooting purposes. So we simulate user experience by measuring jitter, packet loss, and latency to these services, but it's not that through placing like kind of calls explicitly, I would say. I hope this answers the question.
Thank
Um,
you.
yeah, see here.
And if it didn't answer your question, you can always feel free to go to our website, which is netbeez.net, and chat with us via intercom. We reply very quickly and can answer all of your questions there. Or if you'd like to schedule a demo to see how any of this works for yourself, then you can also schedule a demo through our website with the try it button or the 14-day free trial.